Good evening. My name is Ann Thompson. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Larimer County. I want to welcome you to the Forum for Candidates for Fort Collins Mayor and the Fort Collins City Council. The mayoral election is an at-large election, but for City Council, the positions are district elections. On this first panel, we'd like to welcome the candidates for Mayor, Districts 4 and 6. As a nonpartisan organization, the League has never supported candidates or political parties. For almost 100 years, a large part of our mission as a League has been to educate and inform voters, hoping to increase their participation in government at all levels. Members involved in education and voter registration events are committed to remaining unbiased. The League may take stands on issues that are pertinent to their positions, which are the result of extensive study. In the case of the ballot issues for this April 2nd election, however, the Larimer County League has taken no position in support or opposition. Thanks to the city for helping make this forum possible. It's being recorded and will be available for viewing on the League of Women Voters website, lwv-larimercounty.org, and available for rebroadcast on the Fort Collins television channel. This election is a mail ballot election. Ballots will be mailed to voters no later than Monday, March 18th. Drop-off boxes will be available at City Hall, Northside Aslan Center, Southside Transit Center, the Senior Center, and the Police Department. This information and information about other voting options will be included in the mail-in ballot. I want to remind you that to please silence your cell phones if you have not already done so. So here's a brief review of our format. Each candidate will be given 1.5 minutes for an introduction. This is an opportunity for them to include any biographical information that may be useful to voters. After these opening statements, I will pose questions that have been submitted by members of the audience and screened by the League of Women Voters members to avoid duplication. In turn, candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question. Responses will be timed for fairness. At the conclusion of the question-answer period, each candidate will be asked to make a closing statement of 1 minute. So let's begin with the introductions. Why are you running? What experiences or skills do you bring? And what qualities do you think that a person such as mayor should have that the voters want to see in that position, or the council? And we will start with Mr. Pruznick.
Good evening, and thank you for being here tonight live or on a live stream or on a replay and participating in your local government. My name is Michael Pruznick. I'm a candidate for mayor. My background includes serving on a number of city, county, and state boards. Most recently, I'm a director at the Fort Collins Loveland Water District. And my commitment, my strength, that I believe is a unique strength that I bring to City Council is my commitment to resolving city concerns. I've come up with a list of 5 items that I hope to complete in my first 100 days of office, and they include number 1 is modifying the police union contract to put in the continuation clause to address our issues with attrition and attraction of quality officers. Number 2 is to address the concerns about time of day rates having negative impacts on working families. Number 3 is to address the excess water fee, preventing people from HOAs and commercial customers from being able to implement mitigation plans. Number 4 is to promote water conservation through a tap buyback program. And number 5, our communities are only as good as our schools are, and we need to form a regional partnership with the Poudre School District and other stakeholders to make sure that we have school funding covered. Specifically, I'm looking for mill levy dedication on the back end. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Troxell.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure for me to be here tonight, and it's been an honor for me to serve as the mayor the last 4 years. I'm running for mayor. This will be my third and final term. I'll be term limited. I've served on the Fort Collins City Council for the last 12 years. And this is my hometown. It's a wonderful community. I bring my homegrown leadership to this position, as well as a passion for Fort Collins and its future. I've brought practical common sense leadership to this position since I've been mayor. And being the mayor, it's really working together as a council, and I've tried to bring that leadership. You serve on the leadership team as well as helping to set the agenda. So really, the role of the mayor is one as a council member, and I really believe in the council manager form of government, and that we work together as a council, and that leadership really is that we work well together. We might bring different views to the table, but the point is that we work together to get our best outcomes for our community. And I've tried to provide that leadership for the last 4 years, and looking forward to providing that leadership for the next 2 years. It's been an honor for me to serve.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens.
Thank you. Well, thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight. It's great to have an informational talk like this and get to know all the candidates. I'm Kristin Stevens. I serve on the Fort Collins City Council now, have served for the past 4 years on the council. I have lived in Fort Collins for 25 years and in my district for over 20 years. Raised 3 kids in Fort Collins. Worked my way through college at the Stone Lion bookstore for anybody who's lived here a long time. And after college, decided to stay in Fort Collins because I love it so much. I got into started doing community service in the community and wanted to do a little more, and then got on a couple city boards and really liked the work that I did, especially the work that I did on the CDBG board around affordable housing. So that's one of the passions that I have. Was honored to be elected 4 years ago to serve District 4, which is in Southwest Fort Collins. Proud of the work that we've done on council. We've done a lot of great work to help families, and you know, it's interesting because, you know, you're trying to break this down into, you know, why you're running, and, you know, you're supposed to list off 3 reasons you're running. And, you know, for me, the reason that I'm running is that we can really make a difference up here. We can really change people's lives for the better. We can really change our community for the better. And it's been a real honor to serve in that way. I think we have had a really collaborative relationship with the rest of council, and I look forward to continuing that work. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brunswig.
Hello, my name is Lori Brunswig, and I'm running for City Council in District 6. I've lived here in Fort Collins for 38 years, 26 in my district. I have a degree in civil engineering, and I've been on the water board for 8 years, just finishing my last month, December of last year. I feel like because of that, because of my experience, I understand a lot about the infrastructure, and a lot about the community. I've worked for years as a public servant, and I've been here many times to talk, and I really do care about the community. So I think I'm uniquely qualified because of my degree and my time that I have spent working on issues here in Fort Collins. I'll tell you a few things that I'm really concerned about is affordable housing. We don't have enough affordable housing for people. It's causing a lot of problems for people. It's unaffordable. Air quality is particularly bad here. We need better. We have climate change that concerns me very much. We need better transit, and also our oil and gas emissions are coming over and polluting our air. So we need to stop that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gorgol.
Good evening. My name is Emily Gorgol. I was born and raised here in Fort Collins. I went through the PSD school system. I grew up rollerblading on the Pooter Bike Trail. I graduated from CSU, and I've seen this community go through a lot of changes. I'm running for city council because I want to ensure that as our city continues to grow, everyone here has a great quality of life, and that we keep the things that are really important to our community, like the Poudre Trail and our vibrant downtown and our wonderful, great neighborhoods. And I think that Fort Collins is wonderful and a great place to live, but we also are facing a lot of issues such as affordable housing, transportation problems, and maintaining and preserving our natural areas. And I think that's going to take a lot of work, not only from City Council, but also staff and the Northern Colorado community. And I have the history and experience to do that. I have a background of working with communities, municipalities, and residents on solving complex issues. And I've dedicated my career in public health to working alongside communities and residents on identifying community problems. I also have a bachelor's of natural resources from CSU that specifically focused on preserving and protecting our natural environment facing increased use. And I think that Fort Collins is a great place, and I am dedicated to ensuring that this is a wonderful city for all of us to work, play, and thrive in. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kirsch.
Thank you. So like everybody up here, I love Fort Collins. I fell in love with Fort Collins when I moved here to go to school in 1994. And I honor public service. I've built a career in public service as a grassroots organizer, working to create social change by organizing democracy. For the last 12 years, I've had the privilege of working here in Fort Collins, organizing support around sustainable energy policies and practices. And in that time, I have talked with thousands of constituents, of citizens, about the issues that I feel passionate about. So I feel very honored to have had that experience. I've been able to talk to people about environmental protection, social equity, and economic health of the community. Those are the pillars of sustainability. And through those conversations, I have learned a lot about citizen concerns in town, how to communicate issues, and how to bring stakeholders and varying perspectives together to reach mutually beneficial solutions, and then present that to City Council and work with City Council and work with city staff to accomplish the goals that we've all set forth. So I'm running for City Council because I feel that's the next evolution in my service to my community, is to take the skills and the experiences that I've gained and apply that to creating social change from the council seat. That's why I'm running for City Council, and that's why I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you to all of you for your introductions. You've done a great job. I think that we will jump right straight to substance. And Mr. Troxell, you will have the first question. Would you favor the city look at and reevaluate its current, new, and existing housing-related ordinances?
Housing-related ordinances?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, so, you know, one of the main functions of local government is land use, and there's a number of ordinances that related to housing, and you know, one of them I'm sure that might be implied by the question is related to unrelated or the over-occupancy ordinance. That ordinance has been in effect since 1964. It had a criminal offense associated with it, and I believe it was in 2005 when they changed it to the council at that time changed it to a civil offense, and it was implemented in 2007. I'm interested in right-sizing it. That doesn't mean doing away with it. It means really looking at it hard, looking at if it's a 4-bedroom house, and right-sizing it for our community.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens.
Yeah, sure. So I think that, you know, it's worth taking a look at U+2 to see if there are ways that we can, actually, I'm more interested in looking at areas where we can expand the waiver to U+2, which would allow for more people in more bedroom, or for a person in each bedroom. So houses with 4 to 5 bedrooms could have more occupants. To me, it makes sense maybe in parts of our city, not in all parts of our city, but certainly along the arterials and areas that do allow for more multi-housing kind of situations that might make sense. In general, though, I think we really need to take a look at affordability across the board. I think that the problems with U+2 are symptomatic of the fact that Fort Collins is not as affordable for many residents as it used to be. And so building affordable housing, but affordable childcare, I think that there's a lot of affordability issues that we need to look at so that families can afford to live in our community.
Thank you. Ms. Brunswig, your turn.
Yes, I'll talk about U+2. I am strongly in favor of keeping U+2. I lived in Avery Park, and if anybody's lived there, you can relate. It's a disaster. It was terrible living there, and I moved out in 5 years. Here we have a big problem with, and I think the more people there are, it's exponentially more problematic for parking, disruptions, noise, and I will fight to keep that in place. As far as new housing, I think we need to get more affordable, energy-efficient housing, not just boxes, but something that's energy efficient. And also, I actually believe in impact fees for parking. There's not enough parking in it. All the parking is then pushed out into the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gorgol?
Thank you. I think that there were good intentions behind the U+2 ordinance, and that just getting rid of it without something in place to maintain neighborhood quality is not necessarily the right answer. However, we used to think that U+2 just adversely impacted college students, and now we're seeing that working families and couples and individuals are having a really hard time making ends meet.
Coming back to.
So Fort Collins has always been an innovative place and a compassionate place, and I think that we can find some solutions and policies that work together that address things like affordability and housing quality and neighborhood quality, as well as health and safety, and that we're capable of doing that in this community.
Thank you. Mr. Kirsch.
Thank you. Well, I think the first thing that we need to do is have a thorough study of impacts to neighborhood livability and affordability. There are a lot of things that have been happening at the same time that U+2 enforcement started. We started enforcing noise ordinances, increasing fines. There's a lot of different factors that have gone into this. And during the same time, the city's surveys show that people's impressions of neighborhood livability has gone down. So that makes it look like U+2 has not been effective in improving neighborhood livability. And another study shows that it does have a negative impact on housing costs. So I think the first thing we need to do is find out what's going on, have a robust community discussion about it, and craft our policy from there. My personal feelings of U+2, it's discriminatory by nature. 4 related people can live together, but 4 unrelated people can't. That's discrimination. And we can decide as a community if we're okay with that, but it's discriminatory. And I think that we'll find that there are other policies that we can implement that will be more effective in protecting our neighborhoods and affordable housing without being that discriminatory.
Thank you. Mr. Pruznick.
On the U+2 aspect of it, clearly it keeps coming up time and time again. Clearly there's a division in the community, and so yes, clearly as a city council, we need to take the lead of driving that conversation and trying to understand the issues, find common grounds, and find a solution that both sides can live with. One of the things I'll bring to the table is my HOA has a U+2 rule. So even if the city was to expand it, we'd still be limited to U+2. I would like to look into more as to, is U+2 only a problem in non-HOA neighborhoods, or is it in HOA neighborhoods? I tend to resist one solution for the entire city. I like the HOAs taking a role in doing what's necessary and best for their neighborhood on a local level. And wow, time flies when you're having fun. And in particular, I agree with the discriminatory point because, my wife and I being empty nesters, we can only rent our extra bedroom to a single person, not, like a single parent or a married couple. And thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to a different topic. And this one has to do with ethics. Would you be in favor of the creation of an independent Citizen Ethics Commission to investigate and recommend action on complaints regarding elected city officials and also city employees? Would you be in favor of that? And this first question will go, or first answer will go to Ms. Stevens.
Okay. Thank you. if the citizens are concerned about ethics violations, I mean, I think it's something that's worth taking a look at. I'm not sure if other cities have that and what the scope of an independent ethics committee would be. So I think that we'd have to have some study on what that would look like and what they would be investigating. We do have an internal ethics committee, an ethics review board that's made up of several city council members, and we do look into ethics violations, and I think that we've done a good job of looking at issues that have affected us. It doesn't mean I'm opposed to that. I'm not sure, if like I said, if people feel that there's ethical rules being broken, I'm open to looking at that, but I'm not really sure where kind of that comes from and what their scope would be, and so I guess I'd have to know more about it. But it's certainly something we could look at best practices around and see if that's something we want in our community. So, but I don't know a lot about the details.
Thank you. Ms. Brunswig.
Yes, I have thought about that, and it's always good to have oversight in any kind of governmental entity, so I do support that. I would have to know more detail to say for sure, but if it costs a lot, I don't know, but I do support the general idea.
Thank you. Ms. Gorgol.
Yeah, I would see if the residents of District 6 feel concerned that there needs to be a separate ethics committee and bring that back. I think that if it's a concern with the residents, then we should absolutely pursue a more thorough approach to this. And I think that we should look at best practices of other cities and see what their issues have been and if this is something that we need to be in compliance with. And if the residents and best practices show, then absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Kirsch.
I think that an independent ethics board is important. I certainly wouldn't want to be making decisions about my fellow council members based on ethics. I would want somebody else to be doing that. And I would echo the sentiment that if it's something that citizens think is important, that is something that we should pursue more aggressively. It's not something that I have heard of from citizens. I've heard about it, obviously, for tonight, but it's not been an issue that's come up to me. But I obviously value an independent ethics board.
Thank you. Mr. Pruznick.
Yeah, I would support an independent ethics board, but I'd bring up 2 points related to that. Number one is, how do we make sure it is actually independent? If it's appointed by council, we need to make sure it's just not council's yes men that are going to rubber stamp that there's no ethics problems. That doesn't really solve a problem. And number two, I looked back over the city records back to 1995, and there's only been one formal ethics complaint, and that was one that I filed. So I don't really think it's a big issue if citizens are not filing, unless we can somehow show citizens aren't filing because they don't trust the system. And a third point is the State Ethics Commission is working on a draft document in where they're actually saying that they would want to see independent ethics committees at the home rule city level, or they would take jurisdiction. It's a little early to see where that's going to go, but we should definitely keep an eye on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Troxell.
You bet. I would just start off by saying, what's the problem? And not be a solution looking in for a problem. We are a home-ruled city, and we do have an ethics committee that does look into issues as it relates as complaints come forward, and they are fairly looked at, and reports are provided, and so forth. So, and as it relates to the state ethics commission, there's an example of an independent commission that's had some problems with, accusations of partisanship and targeting and things like that. So I would really reflect upon our community. We've had a strong integrity for those that have served on the council. We don't have a record of abuses and things like that. And so I would just start off by saying, what's the problem we're trying to solve? And until that's clearly made in a way that reflects that there's something that needs to be addressed, I don't think that we need to go any further.
Thank you. Okay, on another topic, and I'm going to combine a couple of questions here together. And Ms. Brunswick, you will take a first shot at this one. The first part of this has to do with diversity. How would you promote diversity and inclusion, particularly in participation in council hearings and other city government? And then, the second part of this, what steps should the city take to address acts of discrimination and hate in order to protect the well-being of residents in our city? So there are two parts to that.
Okay, increasing diversity and participation, I think, is really important. We all need to have a voice here, so it should be encouraged. I think we've done a lot with that probably in the city. There's probably things that the city could do to improve that. We need to look at city government and see the makeup of the government and the people in positions of authority and see if there's diversity there. I think that would help. And I really think that we need to keep an eye on making sure that everybody feels welcome.
Thank you. Ms. Gorgol.
Yeah, so I currently work in civic engagement with Latinx communities, and through that work, I think one of the most important things is making sure that we have all voices at the table in decision making, and that we have all voices present during meetings that people of color are typically not at. And so looking at how are our boards and commissions made up, how is city council made up, and is that reflective of our community? And how are we designing processes for civic engagement that reflect the different ways that people like to participate in government? So examining, is it appropriate for all communities to come to city council and make a speech at a podium, or are there different ways that we can interact with our community members to make sure that all voices are represented and heard? And I think it's a large part of what our city should be doing is more engagement with different communities and making all voices present in part. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Kirsch.
Well, I feel that the city is welcoming to input from different communities, but that is not enough. If elected, I will spend a lot of time doing outreach to communities that I currently don't have much interaction with. I'm a privileged person. I get to come to city council and interact with city council on a regular basis. But I understand that that's not for everyone, as Emily said, and we really need to focus on reaching the people that might feel disenfranchised. So I'll be reaching out to different organizations, and not just the organizations, but citizens in District 6 and beyond District 6 as well. As far as hate goes, again, it's not something that I experience directly, so the first thing that I need to do is reach out to the different communities, find out what's going on, and ask them how we can help.
Thank you. Mr. Pruznick.
Yeah, I think this is one area where the city's doing good and they're trying to do better and they're making some steps in that area. You know, my wife had to take early retirement due to disability, and she's gone to the bicycle board or the transportation board to talk about some of the needs because like the bicycle that she used to ride, we had to stop it, get out, push a button, and come back. And she was able to get bike cameras installed where she needed them. There's a little hiccup at the first city plan meeting, creating accessibility for her, but they certainly made up with that on her subsequent involvement in that. And the city was definitely very interested in getting those alternative viewpoints and understanding how they could cooperate and bring those needs into the future. And I would certainly encourage us to just keep on trucking on that and keep on learning and not take the complaints as, you know, as a problem, but as an opportunity to keep moving forward. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Troxell.
Yes. Inclusion is a critical value in our community. Growing up here, our dinner table, we had people from around the world. Also growing up here, there is historical discrimination going on within our community. And Fort Collins has always been an open and a friendly community. And we need to keep that and keep a friendly community for all. There have been a number of opportunities when I've been able to engage with different communities, LGBTQ, the Jewish community, and the Latinx. We just held a business listening session for Latinx business community. I would speak to also the State of the City address we held at the Lyric, and provided the voices of our community as it relates to the values of our community as a part of the State of the City address. So inclusion is a critical value for our community. I've tried to stress it's a value for all in our community, and everyone should have a voice with regards to hate. We should not tolerate that and speak out against it, which I have as well.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens.
Yes. So what I've realized about diversity and inclusion is you can invite people to the table, but unless they're comfortable being there, they're not maybe going to show up. And so I think that a lot of what we need to do more of is going out to people where they're at and really doing that kind of outreach. And I've tried to do that in listening sessions, really, making sure that my listening sessions are family friendly so that people who have a young infant or aren't comfortable coming before the podium are welcome to come to a little bit easier environment that might be more, that is more comfortable, I think, than other, than being in front of a podium and have people above you. So I think going out to people where they're at is really important. And I think, Emily talked a little bit about that work that she's done with mobile home parks. As far as acts of discrimination in our community, we don't want to tolerate those. We've had several acts in our community that have been very disturbing, and I've spent time at the Islamic Center and at the synagogue when those events happened to work with people, but we need to report those and we need to root out hate in our community, and we'll keep working on that.
Thank you very much. So, Ms. Gorgol, you will have the next question. We'll move to a little different topic. So over the past 5 years in particular, the city has had a real growth spurt. It's continuing. So how well do you believe the city has handled the growth spurt of the past 5 years, and how could it have been better managed?
Yeah, so I grew up in Fort Collins, and so I've seen the city grow a lot, and especially over the last 5 years, it has grown even more. And I think the city has done a good job, developing areas that should have some more focus, and I think continuing with infill and development where appropriate is where the city should focus, not only to address some affordable housing options, but also to help with transportation issues. And when you combine those through city code, you can really help address a lot of the community concerns we have. And so I think that as the community continues to grow and as we have people here, really looking at smart and inclusionary growth and how we can still move forward with that so that we can have a good place for everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Kirsch.
Well, I feel that looking forward with growth, I really appreciate the city plan, and I hope that we can follow through on the city plan. One of the complaints that I've heard from people in the development community is that city plans get passed and then not enforced, and variances are granted, and then we run into problems where there's not enough parking in apartment buildings, run into problems of overcrowded neighborhoods. So we need to follow through on that. I agree that we've done a great job in protecting our natural areas and open spaces. We're running into a situation where we can't build our way out of this problem in the future. There's only so much supply that we can add, and I am a fan of increasing housing density. But we also need to take a look at the demand factors that influence housing and look at ways that we can slow growth in our community. One of the reasons that we have had so much growth is that we have a wonderful quality of life here. And I think that that's something that we may be able to utilize as an export and help other communities achieve the same quality of life so that there's less demand for people to move from those communities to Fort Collins. I think, like I said, we need to address the demand side as well as the supply side.
Thank you. Mr. Brunswig.
Yeah, for me, I'm a big fan of what I call smart beneficial growth. And if I look back over the last 5 years, I would say that the growth has failed to meet that standard by my definition. And some of the things I point out to that effect would be, right now we're kind of being told the city's growing, we need to raise our base tax. Well, if you think of that on the long-term sustainability of a community, hundreds, thousands of years, if we keep raising our tax every time we grow, sooner or later the county's going to have to raise their tax, the state's going to raise their tax. We're going to be facing, 100% sales tax to support growth. So growing government is not necessarily the right solution. Sometimes you grow to the point where you need to build bridges over the railroad tracks. That kind of growth and tax increases is possibly good, but we need to be looking at more self-reliant housing, energy independent housing, so that when you're not having that job, you have the energy to survive being generated on site, and it can free you from those energy rates. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Troxell.
You bet. Well, when I was born in Fort Collins, 20,000 people. Now it's 170,000 people. So there's more than 8.5 times in my lifetime. So I don't think it's a growth spurt. I think we've just had steady year-over-year growth. I think one hallmark of Fort Collins is it always has had well-planned development and well-planned growth. Right now, we're in our city plan, which will be coming to council in the next few weeks for approval. And the city plan is really what has provided why Fort Collins is maintained and, in fact, even got better since I was a boy here. And with that, Fort Collins is a plan and do city. And so it isn't haphazard. There are zoning, there are places where things are done well. So in the city plan also includes transportation plan, transit plan, and our cultural resources plan. So all those things come together is what makes Fort Collins a great place that it is.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens.
Thank you. So I think where a lot of current residents see the growth, the pinch of growth is with traffic and congestion. And that's what I hear a lot in the district that I serve. That people can't get to where they want to get, and that they're frustrated by that. I think that I think we've done some really good things. I mean, I think we've having Max come online, expanding our bus system on Sundays has helped with some of those issues. Creating low-stress bike networks so more people feel comfortable commuting to work by bike. Building out our sidewalk system so more people are comfortable walking to places. So I think that those things are helping with growth. We also have a policy that growth pays its own way. So we collect development fees that try to help ease some of the tensions that happen on the roads. But we have been able to, in the past 5 years, expand and improve a lot of our intersections, which has helped. And it's continuing work. We'll keep continuing to do that work. I'm not going to have time to talk about affordable housing, but that's also an issue.
Ms. Brunswig.
Yes, since when I came here, there were 75,000 people, and I know it's grown a lot. So, and I think a lot of good things have happened. I love the natural areas that we have, and that we've got a growth management area set, and we're not going to be growing into the towns around us. But I'm seeing that we are growing faster than I think the city is able to provide services, because there's too many people, too many cars in the road, and I don't want to increase the size of roads or anything. I just think better mass transit might help that. Growth hasn't paid for itself, and I don't know where the idea that it has, but it doesn't. And I think that's why we're being asked to pass another tax. Thank you.
Thank you. And now let's move to a question about our environment. And Mr. Kirsch, you'll have the first shot at this one. We're going to talk about water. Water, which is our state's most precious, or at least one of our state's most precious and scarce resources. How can the city help better manage this resource?
I'm a big fan of conservation first approach. I feel that with any proposed water project, there needs to be a robust set of qualifications in place that demonstrate that everything's been done to conserve water before we build more reservoirs. So, for example, other states have a program called Pay for Grass, Cash for Grass, it's called, where they pay people to xeriscape their yards. Fort Collins has a program similar to that. We may be able to bump that program up. We could do something that we could expand a program that we have for energy efficiency, which is where the city provides low-cost loans over a long period of time to make your home energy efficient. We could do something like that possibly for landscaping improvements. We could improve the landscaping of city property and encourage the landscaping of commercial properties to be more xeriscaped. And to help with the Poudre River and water through town, I would like to see the city of Fort Collins talk to the city of Thornton about ways that we can improve water quality below town so that they would be encouraged to take water out of the Poudre below Fort Collins.
Thank you. Mr. Pruznick.
I think the water conservation starts first with understanding how water works. When you buy your water, you pay a water tap to get some water. And then if you decide to zero-scape at that point in time and you stop using that water doesn't go back to the river. That water goes back to the utility. And because you gave it back to the utility and they didn't buy it from you, that's now available in the pool of water that they have to sell to developers, which results in a slight subsidy to growth and actually can encourage growth. So I would like to have the city have to buy that tap back from you at some particular price. That would also help fund your mitigation programs that you're doing and reduce the barrier to people who would want to conserve. And I'd also like to look into getting into the state's in-stream program so that people could dedicate the water they save back to the river. And I could talk about this all day, but in 5 seconds, I'm not going to say anything more, so thank you.
Mr. Troxell.
You bet. Well, water's always been a precious commodity, and there's been a lot of leadership in northern Colorado and in Fort Collins since the very beginning, because that's where Elwood Mead and a lot of the water law started, was right here. And Fort Collins has a secure water future with a lot of the water rights, but the important point is Fort Collins Water Utility only serves about about 2/3 of the city. The other third is served by water districts, one being Elko, the East Larimer County Water District, and then Fort Collins Loveland Water District. And I would like to see Elko and Fort Collins Water District actually have conservation programs. But one thing that we've tried to do is work together that all the water providers in our community work to conserve. And Fort Collins water users have been continually conserving, and so we have a downward trend in our water usage here in Fort Collins.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens.
Yeah, thank you. So, we do have a pretty robust conservation program, and I always think that could be bumped up. I do think involving the other water districts in that conservation program would be good, just because all the citizens in Fort Collins should benefit from the advantage of having those kind of rebates. I know that we've partnered with the Conservation Corps, and they can come in and bring in low-flow toilets for working families that would like to help start conserving more water. So I think that that's a really good program. We are looking at expanding Halligan Reservoir, and that's for drought protection. So the city does have a really good water portfolio, and we've been good about managing that. I think as the future comes and we see more effects of climate change, we may have to make, we may have to really bump up our conservation efforts, and I think that Fort Collins residents are up for that, certainly. I think that we might have to look at gray water and some other things, and I think some of that's going to involve some efforts by the state as well as the city.
Thank you. Ms. Brunswig.
Yes, I am extremely scared about climate change, and we should be all jumping on the roof about this and screaming. We need to do as fast as we can. We need to get our energy, 100% energy, renewable energy on board. And I don't think 10 years, I think 10 years is going to be too late. We need to do that right away. Conservation, we need to be working harder at that. We have a department that helps people. I don't think it's funded enough. And then NISP. NISP is a whole nother situation. We are going to, if that happens, and I'm totally against that, we will lose our river. It will die. I'm convinced. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gorgol, your opinion.
Yeah, I think that water conservation isn't just a local effort, it's a regional effort, and so we need to work across communities to address this issue. But here locally, the city's done a great job of providing rebates for household appliances and fixtures for conservation, as well as their Zero-Scape program, and I think that's a great way to start addressing our water problem. And I think that it's not a matter of if, but when we have our next drought. And so looking at water storage should be a huge issue. And Halligan is one option of expanding our reservoirs. But I think that as a community, we have reduced our water usage, and it will continue to be a problem. And so how do we be more preventative about our water instead of just reactionary?
Thank you. A couple of things have come up to make this question a nice lead-in, or a lead-in to this next question. And we'll start again with Mr. Pruznick. It has to do with cooperation. How can the city better cooperate with county and other local entities to maximize efficiencies in providing, and this says social services, but I would invite you to extend that in other ways, cooperation between public entities?
So I would start by saying, like, one of the ways that we might be able to deal with the affordable housing situation, the Workforce Center at the county used to have this program where they would help supplement pay for certain individuals that qualified at certain jobs. And, if we can work with that program as opposed to maybe coming up with some of our own stuff and reinventing the wheel, we can get an economy of scale. Another thing that we can do with working with people and working with the county is, the county in particular is, they're the social service providers. And, things like they provide the, I forget the new program is called for food stamps, but we have a tax on food, so we can work with them instead of having a separate grocery rebate program. And there are a lot of little opportunities like that I think we can do well with. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Troxell.
You bet. I've always been a fan of collaboration and partnerships and working together and having conversations, and I've done that with Northern Colorado communities as well as our county and northern counties. And so with that, working together, and we meet quarterly with the mayors, mayor pro tems, the city managers of the cities in Northern Colorado, as well as we meet quarterly with the county and the communities as well. And through those discussions, that's important to have a lot of conversations. I would speak right now about the mental health that was passed on our last ballot, and that was something where we did work together and collaborate and promote together, and that's one area where we are working together on social issues that were critical issues and identifying gaps within our community that need to be served. We have a very robust network of nonprofits that serve our services, and we want to continue to work together and fill the gaps where there are.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens.
Yeah, so, the mayor's right. We do have a lot of regional meetings with counties and other municipalities. The mental health services is one place that we've been able to collaborate a lot, and I serve on the mental health policy committee, and that's going to bring some much needed services, greatly needed services into our community. We've collaborated on I-25 expansion with our neighbors. We've collaborated on the waste shed, so we'll have a new landfill, but also a new recycling center, and that's all been through collaboration with our county and municipal neighbors. I do think that there's room to improve that. I think especially with social services, and Mike's right. The county is a provider of social services, and so to me, a real natural area where we could collaborate is childcare, where there's childcare waiting lists, and we know that childcare is an issue for many working families, and that they're struggling paying $16,000 a year for childcare. So that's one area I'd like to see us collaborate more.
Thank you, Ms. Brunswig.
Yes, I think the county and city has done a fairly good job communicating and working together and making sure that as the city and the county divisions boundaries make sure that the regulations are equal and make sense together. I don't know if I can talk about CSU because that's not but it's an entity that we are highly involved with because it does affect the city in a large way, and I would like to see more cooperation and collaboration with CSU. I think there's always more work to be done, and but I think they're doing pretty good right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gorgol.
Yeah, so I've spent most of my career dedicated to having the city and the county work closely together to address community concerns. And so one thing that come to mind is that the county is really there to provide human services such as SNAP and food bank, or the food stamps, child care vouchers, and the city can really play a large role in preventing the community members from needing that. So if the city played a larger role in affordable housing, then people wouldn't be spending half of their income on their housing and wouldn't need to utilize services such as food stamps. Or if the city worked on really providing a space for childcare, people would be able to use those vouchers to pay for that. And so the city and the county can work really collaboratively to address some of these really big community issues, and that's what's really going to need to happen to move the indicator on any of those.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Kirsch.
Well, I think that there's a lot of collaboration going on with the entities in Northern Colorado. It's happening, I wouldn't say behind closed doors, but not in the most public of setting. A lot of people aren't aware of the collaboration that happens, and I don't feel like there's, or I feel like there's an opportunity for there to be more collaboration among the citizens of the varying communities in Northern Colorado. Part of a coalition for Northern Colorado Partners for Clean Energy, and it was really unique and neat to see citizen groups from 4 communities come together to talk about how to work with, how to improve the public utility that's shared between those 4 communities. And so that's an area where I'd like to see more collaboration is among the citizen groups.
Thank you. Well, that is all the time that we have for questions. I want to give the candidates time for closing statements. And I would ask you to strictly stick to that 60 minutes. And we will start, I'm sorry. Assuming that you're all politicians, I know how that works. 60 seconds. And I would I ask that Mr. Troxell start, please, with closing statements.
You bet. Well, thank you. I want to thank you, Ann, and Sarah, and the League of Women Voters for hosting this. And this was a great service to our community. And I'd like to thank all of you that come out tonight to hear and to hear all the candidates. And it's an important part of our democracy. And here in our city, we are a wonderful city. Our citizens are passionate. They're passionate about our future. And I look forward to serving as mayor for my 3rd term and finishing a number of things that trying to do to make our community better. Growing up here, I think about the things that made Fort Collins a great place and decisions that were made. And so I like to think in terms of long term, the 30, 50, 100 years. And those sorts of things are enduring values for our community, not just for today, but for tomorrow and future generations. So I want to bring that same kind of leadership for my 3rd term. And I ask for your vote.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens.
Thank you. Boy, 1 minute goes by pretty quickly, and we just scratched the surface on so many issues. And as you can see, we have a lot of challenges in our community. And over the past 4 years, we've really been able to, solve some big issues in our community. We've been able to start a broadband municipal broadband, which I think is going to be really great for our community and future-proof us in a lot of ways. We've been able to start Sunday bus service. We've been able to work on affordability issues with affordable housing and income-qualified utility rates, and really been able to make a dent in some of the child care issues that people are facing in our community. So while there's a lot, there are a lot of challenges, I feel like we've been able to meet the challenges we've seen head on, and I think that we're well equipped to go into the future and solve the problems that we're facing around climate change and water scarcity and some of these issues. And I would love to have your vote, and that's my time.
Thank you, Ms. Brunswig.
Yes, like I said earlier, I feel like I'm uniquely qualified because of my engineering degree, civil engineering degree, and my 8 years on the water board. I have learned a lot about budgets, about infrastructure, about the water rights, and about all the the services that the city provides, and I'm very familiar with all those. I also want to say I am concerned about air quality. I'm worried about NISP, climate change. I don't think growth is paying for itself. NISP can't happen if we want to have a city that's any different than anybody else. And U+2 has to stay. I just want to ask everyone who can vote in District 6 to please vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gorgol.
I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and hopefully I've answered most of your questions, and I don't think we had a lot of time, so I think the best way to be a representative is to hear from all of you, not just your questions, but also your solutions, and so please contact me anytime. My phone number is 970-769-6446. I mean it. Please call me or text me. And I think that, Fort Collins is a great place. It's full of compassionate, caring people, and I think together we can make some really innovative, practical solutions that reflect and represent our community. So hopefully I've earned your vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kirsch.
Fort Collins is a truly wonderful place to live, and we have got such amazing resources and talented people in our community, and I would really like to unleash that power to make Fort Collins a real hub of innovation and to integrate with the city, integrate the community with the city in a way where we can really become leaders in sustainability, leaders in showing other communities how we can have affordable housing, how we can have open spaces, how we can have parks and trails, how we can have great public transportation, and maybe we can leave our cars in a garage somewhere. Looking into the future, I would like to promote those ideals so that we can not only make Fort Collins the best community that it can be, but we can really serve our leadership role in making the world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Pruznick, you get the last closing.
Again, thank everyone for being here tonight and participating in your government. I'm going to close with a few of my successes on the Fort Collins Loveland Water Board and as an illustration of what I hope to bring to the city. In our last election, we were torn a new one, really, by the citizens about lack of a conservation program and developers by our upfront fees. And we put our egos to the side and we sat down and we said, what are the underlying concerns? And since then, we've changed the rate structure. So the upfront fees are replaced with a back-end surcharge that's being phased in over 3 years, and that's been very well received by our community. We're doing the Garden in the Box program. We're outsourcing our sprinkler audits to the city for efficiency purposes. And we changed our tiered rate structure so that it would better charge the highest users most and the low users less to acquire efficiency. And that type of working together and solving problems is what I'll bring to the office of mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to each of the candidates for participating in the forum and your willingness to be a public service. Local government manages a lot of different things, as you've heard, and the decisions directly affect citizens' lives. So to our audience and viewers, please remember to vote. Your vote will make a difference. Think of your vote as an investment in the future of Fort Collins. If you would like further clarification from a candidate response, if your question didn't get answered, please feel free to speak with that candidate in person. There's candidate information available in the lobby area outside the meeting room following this forum. In addition, there's information about membership in our league, which is not for women only, by the way, and ages 16 and over. A reminder that a recording of this forum will be posted on our website and also rebroadcast on the Fort Collins City Channel. I would also recommend that you look at our website, the League of Women Voters online voter guide, which is vote411.org. It has posted information and responses from the candidates as well as unbiased ballot issue information for this election. You can register to vote there. It gives you a personalized ballot and you can check your registration. Finally, I want to express appreciation to all who attended and those who will view the forum online for being interested in this local election. Please encourage your neighbors and your friends to participate in this process, which makes us all equal. We will continue now with the second part of our forum. I would remind those of you who have just joined us to silence your cell phones. And I would remind you that this is the second part of our candidate forum for Fort Collins Mayor and Fort Collins City Council. In this particular part, in the second panel, we welcome the candidates for District 1 and 2. And I would like to point out that District 1 election is being held to fulfill the term of Bob Overbeck, who resigned. We will go directly to introductions, and each candidate will have a minute and a half in this situation to introduce themselves and explain why they think, what qualities they think they bring in terms of what voters want to see as a mayor or a city council member. And if you have specific examples, I encourage you to share those. And we will begin with Ms. Gutowsky.
Well, thank you to League of Women Voters for offering us the opportunity to present our thoughts. I am in a unique position because I'm running to retain the seat that I already have. For the last couple of months, I've already been serving on City Council, and I was appointed to fill the position of Bob Overbeck. It's been an extremely enjoyable experience so far. I find the council members to be very easy to work with, to be very, very bright, and it's been a wonderful experience. What I have found is that the people who have, I'm especially appreciative of the people who have taken the time to, as we call, uploading or giving me the training that I need in order to literally hit the ground running, and I want to express my appreciation for the city staff that's done that for me. I've lived in Fort Collins with my husband. In fact, I kiddingly say on our two dachshunds, but they are not 40 years old. But my husband and I have lived in Fort Collins for 40 years. And we have thoroughly enjoyed our time, and I dedicate myself to maintaining the comfortable neighborhoods, the clean neighborhoods, and our Poudre River.
Thank you. Mr. Haas.
Good evening. Pleasure to be here. Are we good? Okay. Again, my name is Glenn Haas. I live in the Hearthfire subdivision way up north off of Douglas Road. We've lived in Fort Collins for 43 years, 20 up in Hearthfire. Both sons and their wives and my wife have CSU degrees, so we're very green and we're very loyal to the town and gown relationship. I've had two careers while living in Fort Collins. One was as a natural resource expert, a professor at CSU for 27 years in the College of Natural Resources, teacher, scientist, and department head. Headed up the CSU Environmental Learning Center out east in District 1 here, built the Colorado Welcome Center through a collaborative effort. Very thrilled with that effort. On the other career is, just don't ask me how I got there, but I'm the owner of Crazy Carl's Pizza with my son, and has tossed me into the world of economics and business, and it's been a wild, wild ride. And one of the reasons I'd like to be on the council is because of a need to bring economics and bring small businesses concerns to the floor of the council. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Mr. Somodi.
Hello, everyone, and it's a real pleasure to be here. I was canvassing recently, and I went up to a house that had a 91-year-old woman, and I didn't think she would answer, actually. I wasn't sure if she'd be home or able to, and she actually answered the door. She opened the door really wide, had this huge smile on her face, and I had this amazing conversation with her. And the next house down, I talked to another gentleman who's 25 years old, had a little kitten and a 2-year-old baby, and we had this amazing conversation for about 20 minutes on his porch about various issues. And he lives right near this railroad track. And I think about these doors that I'm knocking on and these people that I'm meeting, and it just energizes me so much to want to serve this community. It is so darn special. And I think what makes me unique is that the last 20 years I've been a small business owner, and my job as a small business owner has been to listen. So in some ways, I've been a professional listener. Once I used to own a video production company for a dozen years, and now I'm a health educator for the last dozen years, and my job is to take in people's experiences, understand where they're coming from, and then be able to process that. And I think that's the biggest part about being on city council, that being a professional listener, being able to absorb that, and then being able to find the right iota of information to move the conversation forward.
Thank you. Mr. Eggleston.
Good evening. My name is Adam Eggleston, and I'm your candidate for City Council District 2. I would like to start this evening by thanking the League of Women Voters and everyone for joining us. This has been a fun night of conversation, and I look forward to our part. For the past 4 years, I have worked to serve on numerous boards and commissions in Fort Collins, including the Park and Advisory Board, the U+2 Occupancy Study Task Force, the Capital Improvement Fees Working Group, as well as a City Plan Ambassador over the last year. I've also attended most, if not all, City Council meetings, and this has given me a great sense of background, knowledge, and expertise, I think, to help move Fort Collins forward. I'm running because I have lived in Fort Collins for nearly 30 years, and I would like Fort Collins to stay a place where I can hopefully grow old and retire. So by looking at different realms within the city that we can make sure that Fort Collins can stay attainable for everyone is, like we've talked about tonight, a lot of housing issues, but also looking at the difference between affordable and attainable housing is a big issue with me, and the different areas in which we can have measurable, accountable, and sustainable goals to reach. So I look forward to having a great discussion this evening, and thank you all for joining.
Thank you. Ms. Holmes.
Hi, my name is Susan Holmes. I'm running on a very specific issue. If people wanted to look up my Twitter webpage on the City Council candidate pages, and you'll see that it takes you linked to the white paper that I have developed and written, and represents my platform. My 19-year-old son, Jeremy Holmes, was slaughtered here in Fort Collins a little over a year and a half ago. There is a lot of issues surrounding what happened with my son. No one was willing to listen to my voice, the city council. Other people were not. I tried to contact the police. I went through a lot of things. I'm still going through a lot. I have an open records lawsuits against Colorado State University because they refused to release any documents in my son's homicide. So my platform has to do with ending police violence and re-engineering community policing.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchison.
Good evening, everyone. Noah Hutchison, and as you can tell, I'm sitting, not running, but I would love your vote for District 2. I am running for City Council really because of a dream that I had when I was 8. Ever since I was 8, I dreamed of the day I would run for an elected office, and the aspirations begin here in this great city of Fort Collins, and I'm excited about that. I spent the last 10-plus years fine-tuning organizations, small and large, working with factual data, working with real people to find solutions that were effective and that really worked. And so I'm running because I want to bring that to the table, scaling organizations, scaling businesses, and working with real people in their highest and lowest points. For me, I, over the last couple years, finished my master's in organizational leadership with a focus in government, just as a continuation to be prepared with theoretical knowledge for this very moment. And throughout those years, I've had the opportunity to be in 5 continents, in multiple different states, in multiple different cities, and I'm so glad that I landed in Fort Collins because the choice city that we have here and the people who are here are special. And my hope is to use an economically and environmentally balanced approach that values quality of life for every single person in this city to be able to maintain that city that we all love and know and enjoy. I have an amazing wife and 2 intelligent daughters, as well as a 2-year-old son, and I'm well prepared to give the time to those guys, as well as this position if elected.
Thank you. Ms. Pignataro.
Thank you. I'm Julie Pignataro, and I moved here over 25 years ago to attend CSU. Since coming here, I have gained a broad and deep understanding of our city as a student, as a job seeker, as an employee, as a first-time home buyer, as a manager, as a wife, and then as a mom. At my current position at the USDA, we've experienced a lot of growth in the last 3 years, hiring over 110 new employees. It's been interesting to see how the issues that face our city have played out where I work. Many of those employees were not found here because of a talent shortage, and many of our employees choose not to live in our community because of a lack of affordable housing. So not only do they not get to call Fort Collins home, they commute in and out of the city 5 days a week, adding to our congestion problems and our air quality. Over the last few years, and actually beyond, from when I started in college, I've been involved with our city in various ways. I am a graduate of the City Works 101 program last year. I am on the Citizens Review Board, and I am also in the Water Literate Leaders of Northern Colorado class. I'm Julie Pignataro, and I would like your vote. Thank you.
Thank you all. So we'll start with a question of substance, and this will go first to Mr. Haas. Would you favor creation of an independent citizen ethics commission to investigate and recommend action on complaints regarding elected city officials and also city employees?
The operative word there for me is independent, and in this day and age, I think anything we can do to operate in an independent fashion provides higher safeguards and more accountability to the community. We did hear some of the last panel say, is there a problem? Is it broken? I would add that as a caveat that maybe it might not be necessary. We would need to listen to the community and see if they feel that it's necessary. If that were the case, then I would opt for an independent with some liaison, some linkage to city staff or to city council.
Thank you. Mr. Somodi.
I think we have to really look at the issue and whether it's needed or not. I think that's the best lens on an ethics committee. I don't want to create more work than what we need to. Plus, if we don't have a history about this issue, looking back and seeing that it's been a long time since there's anything that's happened, then maybe that's a sign that the ethics committee wouldn't have a very big function. And the fact that the city actually does already have some pieces of this in place already is a sign that we are dealing with it to a certain degree. So we want to make sure that we're not overdoing the work that we don't need to do. I actually sit on an ethics committee for my health education certificate, so I have done this role before, and it's been very rare that we've actually been needed as the ethics committee, which is a good thing, because the final thought I want to leave you with is that I think we should be hiring the people in these leadership roles that already have the amazing ethics.
Thank you. Mr. Eggleston.
I think this would be actually a fantastic opportunity to potentially partner with CSU on some type of a pilot program. Based on the level of, or the non-existent ethical complaints against the city, I don't know if it's a huge issue to dedicate a lot of time from the staff, but I do think it would be a really great opportunity to partner with CSU or independent organizations to do a pilot program to see if there is a need for it, how that would evolve, and then decide if we need to continue it or not. So I would be open to the idea and looking at it in multiple different fashions and see if we can do some type of a partnership before we go in and do an independent committee outright.
Thank you. Ms. Holmes.
Ethics Commission, yes. How that would be structured, whether we're going to add another layer of bureaucracy, or how the people are appointed, as long as they're not appointed by the people that they're supposed to, be have oversight with. Let me tell you, there are serious ethic issues with government employees in this city, because I have encountered them. I'm still encountering them. Okay, there's no transparency in the police agencies here. They're city employees. I fought a battle from the moment my son was killed to get transparency about what was happening with him. I cannot get unredacted body cam footage so that I can have it audited. And an ethics commission I would definitely support.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchison.
You know, I think Susan's experience is case in point why everyone has an individual experience. I think what I've experienced is that the city of Fort Collins already has 29 boards and commission boards that already have a lot of work to do and already spend a lot of time, including an ethics committee that reviews what is actually happening and it being ethical. And the individual experience piece is important because what I perceive to be the case from hearing it from individuals, as well as just my own personal experience being involved in this city and with city council, is that ethics is not a problem, and it's not a problem we see in the context of local city councils across the board. And so for me, it doesn't appear to be the problem, but at the end of the day, if the citizens feel like that is the case, then I would support it. Lastly, I'd just say this. Obviously, ethics and our integrity are important, and if that doesn't if that's not a clear thing that people feel like is the case with our local government, then that's a perception we need to change, and it doesn't need to be that case.
Thank you. Ms. Pignataro.
Thank you. I think it's important to understand what the problem is that we're trying to solve with this ethics committee. As Noah alluded to, there are a lot of boards and committees in the city, but as I've seen, they all are really doing their part. And it is, I would be open to it definitely, but have to look at what the actual problem is that we're trying to solve and how to best solve it. Mm-hmm. For instance, should it be completely made up of citizens? What kind of a council liaison would be associated with it? And just to make sure that we're not layering another issue on top of the one we're already trying to fix.
Thank you. Ms. Gutowsky.
Since we already do have ethics commissions and committees in existence, I think I would simply invite perhaps citizen participation on the existing ethics committees that we have.
This next question, we've had several questions that are sort of related and a couple of new ones that have come on the same one. I'm going to try to ask you to discuss issues involving diversity, social, local, ethnic, and social diversity. And there'll be a couple of parts here. First of all, would you support city promotion of more public events that celebrate local, ethnic, and social diversity? If we had a Hispanic commission, how would we have a voice where so many feel that we don't? Would you support that? In general, how would you promote diversity and inclusion? And in particular, with participation in council hearings and other city government. And the flip side of that is what should the city do to address acts of discrimination and hate that occur in order to protect the well-being of the residents of our community? And we'll start that with Mr. Somodi.
That's a lot to handle in 60 seconds. But I will say that there is a wall, and we have to break that wall down when it comes to diversity, inclusion, and equity. I believe that a Hispanic commission is the right step right now because we have 10% of our community that are Hispanic, Latino, Latina. So that would be a really wonderful way to break down that wall. I see the possibility of events is good. The idea is good, right? But I don't know if the community is just looking for public events to recognize their cultural heritage. I'm not discounting those events, but I think that there's more that can be done. I live in District 1. I pass by Las Tres Colonias every single day. I see what's going on in that community, and I don't want them to feel like they're being caved in on. I feel like they need to have a really strong voice in this community.
Thank you. Mr. Eggleston.
Yes, I think it's a good question. I think the city does do a decent job in outreach, but I think we can always continue and refine it look for area of the city that we can actually continue to improve on through possible events. That is something the city does really well, is these events in different parts of the city, and look to be as inclusive as possible in everything we do. And that's moving out different ways that we can do outreach when we have city council meetings, better publications whenever topics of importance, which most city council meetings are topics of importance. And just continue to work on ways that we can get the message out there better. And that's working with our citizens to really just have a better dialogue and figure out ways to get there.
Thank you. Ms. Holmes.
Yes, I do support and would absolutely promote diversity of every kind. I was a member of the Southwest Hispanic Roundtable for 8 years. I was very active in promoting any kind of issues having to do with diversity. Diversity, though, extends to how we treat people. And you mentioned city council and that. I would just like to address this little factor here, that I believe that the city council is not diverse. I think we may need more diversity on the city council, and that diversity has to do not only with ethnicity, it also has to do with social economics, okay? And I can tell you that there's not much diversity when it comes to wanting to voice information and an opinion with this city council. I have personally experienced it.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchison.
Thank you. I absolutely would support diversity and people expressing their cultures through an event in our city. Everybody has an individual experience. Being someone who's traveled all over the world, I can remember when the Haiti earthquake happened and going and spending weeks in Haiti helping people who were living under a piece of plastic and seeing what their culture brought to me, brought great joy and things that I've carried with me for the 9 years since then, as well as many other places in the world. So I wouldn't want to be a city that took that away from anyone. How that would be expressed, that could be a journey we could go on. How would I promote inclusion? How does the city do? I mean, as was mentioned earlier, the Latinx community that got together last week is business leaders learning how they can collaborate together in the city. There's other initiatives that are happening. I would definitely, I myself have been a part of putting on the largest Easter egg hunt in the city, where we see people of every single race and every ethnicity in our city come out, thousands of people. And then lastly, discrimination and hate is not okay, and we need people to be able to have a place to express their voice so that that is not the situation they live in.
Thank you. Ms. Pignataro.
So diversity is how we can come up with innovative solutions, and I think it is imperative that council understand that there is not everyone who lives here experiences this as the choice city. Outreach has been talked about a lot, and different ways of going out to the different communities instead of making them come to us is definitely a priority for me when on council. As far as promoting events, I think absolutely the city should promote these events. The city has a very broad and a portfolio of different events that are put on through the year, and so that needs to be thought about as those are being put on. And what was touched upon a little bit, absolutely we cannot tolerate any kind of hate crime in this city, and we need to make sure that that does not ever extend into the government. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gutowsky.
Well, I'd like to extend diversity past ethnic diversity, because I think we're looking, when we talk about inclusion, we're talking about LGBTQ, we're talking about people with disabilities. All are included in diversity. And I would invite people of of all walks to participate in their government. That's what I would like to see. I would love to see involvement in committees. I would like to see people who people get a voice in their government, because I think unless you have a voice and unless you're participating in the government, in the city, in the community, your voice may not be heard, and I think that's essential.
Thank you. Mr. Haas.
Yes. In a regular council meeting, people come to the front and they have 3 minutes to speak and it's stressful and you don't say much in 3 minutes. I'd like to see better use of our work sessions. Twice a month we have work sessions. Maybe that should be 4 times a month. And that high topic, high priority issues like diversity, you sit down with City Council for a half hour, for 2 hours, whatever it takes, and really peel the onion back so you get into the substance, you get beyond the 3-minute sales pitch, and it's in a more relaxed, effective kind of a setting. Likewise, with related to land use planning, we can't expect everybody to come to our meetings. We have to reach out, particularly to some groups, and engage them and get their input into those kinds of decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Eggleston, you will have the first shot at this. Is also a bit of a combined question. It has to do with individual income. And there have been 3 things that have come up here. Underemployment across Larimer County. Does the city have a role there? Income inequality in our city. What is the city's role there? And also the city's role overall in economic development. Could you address some of those issues, please?
Yes, I think we have a very highly educated population in Northern Colorado and Fort Collins in specifically. So I think the city does have a role to play. And I like that role to be where the city looks to attract new innovative industries to Fort Collins, especially around, I think, the green energy field, where we can work on battery storage or energy storage to reach our climate action goals. And as we can add different industries, we can actually broaden our workforce base and actually increase, I think, better careers and incomes for a lot of our citizens. I do think there's a gap, especially when looking at the housing affordability and attainability issue and our medium income, when it comes to the low-end pay to the high-end pay in Fort Collins. And we need to work out situations, public-private partnerships, where we can look to encourage that and have stair-stable approaches to employment.
Thank you. Ms. Holmes.
Well, there's a lot of things you can say that sound very generic, about how economic development is supposed to happen here in employment, finances, employment, you're increasing your salaries. But the reality is that there's a huge gap in terms of housing. People are spending all of their income, or at least half of it, on their housing and other needs. So I think that to try and address that kind of issue in just 1 minute, there's a lot of details that go into that. And I think we just, partnerships, this, that, it's all generic. It's a really much bigger issue, and it's a very broad, topic. So I think you need a lot more time to address that in detail.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchison.
Thank you. At the end of the day, the city's role is not pinpointed in a box. It's continually changing when it comes to where we were 10 years ago, where we are right now, and where we'll be in 10 years. And so practically, I think the city definitely has a role in all of these things. And I think that it may sound generic, but we can be specific. Neighbor to Neighbor, other nonprofits, Habitat for Humanity. Those are specific organizations in our city who are driving forward and against this very issue of housing and income inequality and helping people who are underemployed. I think we have a lot of millennials in our city, and people are continually coming here because of the quality of life that I want to continue to maintain. But specifically, they're not happy with a starting wage job, even though they haven't had a college education. And so I think just there's not one size fits all for people. And then lastly, with economic development, it's critical to keep the businesses in our city. The businesses are what make our city what it is. They're the places we go to, the places we drive by. They're the ones who fuel our ability to walk with my kids as a family in Horsetooth Reservoir and enjoy our great landscape. So all of that's important.
Thank you. Ms. Pignataro.
Thank you. As far as underemployment, I think that is something that we really need to tackle and was touched upon in the Talent 2.0 study that was done with the Chamber as well as the city. I've yet to see anything come out of that to actually address that problem, and that goes back to what I was talking to in my beginning statement as well. I think that the city's role in overall economic development is we've done a fabulous job making people want to live here. That's very evident. but we have to make sure that they can afford to live here. Even though it is a state level issue for minimum wage, I would like to see the city take a stance pro raising the minimum wage to something that's livable. No one should ever have to work a full day and not be able to live off of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gutowsky.
One of the things that hasn't been mentioned is that we have the raw talent for our workforce sitting right in our schools. And coming from an educational background, having served 8 years on the Poudre School Board, I would like to partner with Front Range Community College, Poudre School District, to provide technical education for students who are coming out into the workforce. Not everybody needs to go to college. Only 20% of the jobs in our community require college. Technical education, the old term vocational education, voc-ed, is the direction that we need to go so that we can get the kids out, get them good jobs, put more money in their pockets. And I think rather than raising minimum wage, I would say that we provide them an opportunity for a good wage.
Thank you. Mr. Haas.
Yes, from a small business owner perspective, we're in a constant recruitment, retention mode with young people. We have 175 employees. They tend to be in the 20 to 30 range. It's a real challenge. I would favor pushing. I'd like to be known as the highest paid pizza joint in Colorado, and I'd like to see that minimum wage pushed up. We do have a jumping ship here. We do have a sales revenue problem in Fort Collins. We've been flatlined in terms of sales tax revenue. Some people would say that's because people are going down south. Some people would say it's an internet sales has drained off. But we need to take action on that because that's going to affect services that we can provide down the line. It's the main 45% income stream into the city is the sales tax, and we are flatlining.
Thank you. Mr. Somodi.
Well, I'm on the board of La Familia, the Family Center, so I know well about the issues facing income inequality for the Latinx community. And I was a former member of the Human Relations Commission, and we worked a lot with income inequality. I think one of the solutions we can start to think about is there a necessary liaison from the city to the county to start to build a stronger relationship to see where the gaps are in the conversation around attracting and retaining the right businesses and the right talent into our community. I think the Talent 2.0 survey was really good. I think it's still early. It just got completed, so I think we're still trying to get into the flow. But I think One NOCO, the combination of all the chambers working together, is another part of the story. So the final word on this, I think, is around partnership. We want to make sure that we're always building the strong network of partnerships so that we are kind of funneling the information on the web and in getting people to come to our community and retain the talent.
Thank you. Well, this is a new topic here, but I think it's a very important one. The first shot will go to Ms. Holmes. Our local newspaper is declining in service. I think most of us have seen that, and a lot of people are not taking the printed newspaper anymore. But what can the city do to improve news access and area news, and how can they help it reach to the citizens, because that's an important part?
Okay, I am a big fan of internet news. I'm on the internet all the time. I've been there for many years. And I can understand why the local newspaper is declining because of the internet. So here's what I would suggest right away is that this TV station here in this community that belongs to the community should start becoming very active, so all the local people here who want to do little mini news sites, little mini news programs should be allowed access to this public TV, the one that we're being taped on right now. We should have a whole list, a backlog of people coming on and doing little talk shows and providing alternative information, and that would also include the Colorado, and they could have their own show.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchison.
Sure. The reason why this question is important is because what happens in these very council chambers and what's happening in this city, if no one knows about it, then they don't actually know how to basically respond to the real things that are happening in their life. And there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It is the newspaper. The Coloradan does publish some great things. It's social media. It's the internet. But what I found to be the most effective, and I'm sure this is the case for many of you, is person to person. It's people stepping out their door and enjoying Colorado, and it's talking to your neighbor. And so I think that if we can promote that in a way as one of the mediums, it will be super helpful. Additionally, it's there's so many venues of ways that communication can happen. I know for city council people, and a lot of times just doing forums where individuals can have access to hear and to share about issues. And so the news media is changing, but there's a lot of different mediums that people can get access.
Thank you. Ms. Pignataro.
Ms. Thompson, can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. It's about the local newspaper, the Coloradoan, which has provided a lot of news, local news. What can the city, or can the city do anything to improve area news and help it reach the citizens? Because it's an important part of our democracy process.
Thank you. I think one thing that I have different from every person that has sat up here tonight is I actually used to work at the Coloradoan. Hi, Kevin. And I did leave around 2002. I saw the writing on the wall way back then. It's imperative that we make sure that our information sources are true, and also that we can educate our citizens in how to know news that is worthy of their time as opposed to that which is not factual based. As far as how that leads into the city, I apologize for the digression. I have a master's in information and library science, so I nerd out on that stuff. I think, the city just needs to continue to be as transparent as it can and also help the employees with their communication about some of the changes that they make to policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gutowsky.
Well, the good news, if you haven't heard it, is that Connections broadband is coming. It's going to connect the city of Fort Collins with about 1,000 miles of fiber that will enable everyone in Fort Collins to access the internet. It's a dream that I've had for a long, long time, that everyone will have access to that. And we know that you can get the news online, but if you could never get online, then you couldn't read it, but you will, and that's the promise. And it's going to be affordable, and it's going to be excellent service. And so I encourage you to anticipate that coming.
Thank you. Mr. Haas.
Yeah, I would like to think about a public information site that would be hosted by the city, and ooh, thank you. Bonus 13 seconds. I just lost them. I lost my mind. Yeah. This comes to mind in this election where you all are trying to figure out who we all are, and I can't figure out who everybody is, and we can go on to our individual websites, but that's an individual website. For the city to put out 25 comprehensive questions, have all of us answer those questions, have that posted one time, one place, easy to get to, that kind of a source I think would be valuable. And if there's other kinds of products or information that are coming out different departments that should be highlighted, it's a little bit hard to get to the individual departments to track some things down. But highlighted items could be part of this public information site.
Thank you. Mr. Somodi.
Well, I'm going to answer this question in the spirit of City Council, and I would really love if we could take the 3.5, 4 hours of a City Council meeting and make it into about 5 minutes for the city to really be able to process that. I would also really love to see the lengthy minutes or the lengthy agendas that we tend to see online, get those condensed down, have it more common language for everybody to be able to understand. What we're experiencing in a culture today is we're taking everything in bite-sized pieces. I think our attention spans are getting very, very short, and that's an issue in terms of how we're going to take in our information. So in some ways, we need to, as a city and a city council, we need to allow the access to the information to be easy, and making the minutes and the agendas and making the TV, the actual council meetings become more accessible would be a good step in the right direction.
Thank you. Mr. Eggleston.
I actually agree with Joe quite a bit. Attending most of the city council meetings, they can be quite long and very technical. Last night went to 11 o'clock. So I think the city can work closely with the Colorado Wind to get a better format to get the information or needed information to the public. The city does a really good job of informing individuals who subscribe or follow the city on social media, but I don't think most of the citizens actually follow it. So the city, I think, it'd be a great way to engage with the Colorado Wind and also local news organizations to just get the better cross implementation of news sources and information, so people can go to one or any source and get the same information that's vetted through the city or the Colorado Wind, and also work well to just make it simpler for everyone to be able to be engaged and informed citizens.
Thank you all. So, Mr. Hutchison, you will have the next question, and this is going to pertain to, again, I'm trying to combine some questions, but specifically energy and resources. Would you support increased energy efficiency requirements in new homes in Fort Collins? Would you be in favor of that? And how can the city help manage the very precious and scarce, because we live in a high desert, resource of water? And in addition, we'd like you to please, if you could, say what actions that you personally have taken to show that you support the city's climate action plan.
Absolutely. I would definitely support, so all of it's about balance at the end of the day. I would support increased requirements for efficiency if that's what the public wanted and that's what we felt like was the best thing in order to serve the goals of where we've agreed upon as a city that would allow us to maintain the quality of life and what we hope Fort Collins to be in the future. I think the city plan, which on March 19th the council will be reviewing, highlights a number of those things. Secondly, what the city's help with water. I mean, the adoption or the expansion of Halligan Reservoir from 6,000 to 14,000, and the attempt to do that is important because of the fact that it allows us, when, not if, a drought comes, to be able to be prepared so that we don't experience a negative quality of life by not having water. And then lastly, the action, the actions. What actions have I done? I love riding my bike. I'm a triathlon, an Ironman triathlon, and I try to ride my bike everywhere I go instead of putting emissions out with my car.
Thank you. Ms. Pignataro.
Thank you. Yes, I would support increased energy efficiency in homes. I think the builders that have come to this community understand that that is a high value of Fort Collins, and they know that they will be expected to build at standards they may not elsewhere. As far as water, as I mentioned in the beginning, I am in the Water Literate Leaders of Northern Colorado class, and that is an amazing one that brings a bunch of voices to the table. Everyone from environmentalists to ranchers to farmers to builders, it's all over the place. And it is amazing what can happen when you bring all those different voices to the table. As far as what we've done at home, well, we have a 5-year-old, and so it has been a joy to teach him the little things that you can do every day to make sure that you're saving water, saving energy, and doing your best. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gutowsky.
I would definitely support higher energy standards in buildings. That there's no question about that. With regard to water, support the expansion of the Halligan Reservoir because we do need to save that water for drought conditions. But I'm especially concerned about our climate action plan. My granddaughter told me recently, she says, "Grandma, do you realize that 2030 is the drop dead date? What are you going to do about it?" And I said, I'm going to try my best to accelerate our climate action plan. And I made that promise to her. And I do believe that that's what we need to do.
Thank you. Mr. Haas.
Thank you. I consider myself an environmentalist, and I'll start with what have we done lately. My wife and I purchased 3 solar panels in the cooperative farm out on Riverside. We drive a hybrid. I use an electric lawnmower, and every month we're really excited to see the little smiley faces on our electric bill that says we're doing a good job. In terms of the increased energy resources and efficiencies, great idea. I would probably lean towards trying to put incentives in place as opposed to regulating it, because we're driving up prices and it backs into the affordable housing argument, the homeless argument. So we need to be really careful about jumping on board some of these additional items. And with water, no one's mentioned the supply side management of water, and that means we need to be talking to Greeley and Weld County at a much larger scale that we're doing right now with regional cooperation to manage the supply. I'll stop.
Thank you. Mr. Somodi.
Yes, this is a culture change. I think in this community, we are looking very deeply at the future, and we know that electric cars are coming. We know that we need to start being more efficient. We need to make sure that the grid is not only supplying what we need, but giving back more so that we can have extra energy to give back, just like the recycling center on Timberline, which I think is an amazing innovation that we need more of. I think we need to start bringing back gray water into the conversation. That ended in 2017 for some reason. It's been on the back burner. Let's put it back on the front burner. Let's think about innovative ways like the toilets have sinks right on the top of the toilet so that you're actually saving a lot of water over a long period of time. What would happen if we made those mandatory in city spaces? So the main idea is to make sure that this is a behavior change, the time of day, and that is a good example of how we're making behavior changes so that we have energy efficiencies in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Eggleston.
Yes, I support incentives to bring up homes and to be more energy efficient. The city has several different programs already in place, and I think we can strengthen those programs to doing energy audits and look for ways to actually make each home more energy efficient. And I like the volunteerism of that and incentives rather than just more regulations. Water storage is going to be key with the potential growth in all of Northern Colorado by a couple 100,000 individuals. We're going to need to expand Halligan and really look to see what the viability of the NISP project or Glade Reservoir to help support an additional couple 100,000 individuals. And then with the Climate Action Plan, I work with a lot of builders in my day job to either do solars on new construction. Everything's built now with LED light bulbs and low flow utility sinks and stuff of that nature. So I definitely have tried to do that on my side.
Thank you. And finally, Ms. Holmes.
Would you mind reading those questions again?
Yes, I will. So the questions have to do with energy. Water is one of our scarce resources. How can the city better manage the resource? Would you support increased energy efficiency in new homes requirements? And what actions have you personally taken to show that you support the city's climate action plan?
Okay, well, I think that the city's managing the water issue very well. You know, they're starting that halogen project. Reservoir. Yes, of course I would support energy efficient homes. That's a no-brainer. And two, or I guess the third one is climate action plan. What have I done? Well, I've lived completely conservatively with everything since I was 17 years old. I was into alternative energy at 17 years old when everyone else thought we were crazy and told us we were nuts for being vegans and for being green way back then. You know, I've lived very conservatively all my life, and I practice it.
Thank you very much. We've had so many good questions, and I want to thank the audience for those, but we are going to be, if we have time for closing arguments, we do have to not have another question. So if you have questions that didn't get answered or you want clarification, please be sure to ask these people afterward. And now we're going to have closing statements of 1 minute each, starting with Ms. Pignataro.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for staying with us through this night. It's great to see so many friendly faces out there in the audience as well. Thanks for coming. The skills that I have brought to my job will suit me and the city well up here. Those skills of collaboration, big systems or systems thinking or big picture thinking, empathy, active listening, curiosity. I use what I learn to inform all of my decisions. I'm very passionate about a lot of things that this particular panel didn't touch on: animal rights, equal rights, and the environment. But most of all, I'm very passionate about this city. So I'm Julie Pignataro. I'm in District 2, and I would be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gutowsky.
I think experience is the best teacher, and I'm very grateful to have been able to serve already for almost 2 months in this position. One of the things that I think that I do bring to the council is a female perspective. Up to my appointment, we only had 1 woman on council. We now have 2. But what I can assure you that this experience has taught me is that my job, my primary job, is to serve the people of District 1 and the people of Fort Collins, to make sure that your water is clean, that your air is clean, that your neighborhoods are safe and livable. And that's what I see the job of council to be. We've talked about a lot of great ideas, but it comes down to taking care of you. And that's my pledge, and I would appreciate your vote to enable me to continue to do the job that I've been doing.
Thank you. Mr. Haas.
I agree with experience. I've had 40 years of board experience in my career, ranging from small hearth fire subdivisions to being the Senior Vice President of the National Parks and Conservation Association, national organization. I love interacting with people. I love listening with people. I love running complex problems through processes. I love transparency, so I would like to be part of this council. I have been honored to be endorsed by the Sierra Club and another developer and organization who has not made a public announcement, so I'm not going to mention their names. But when you put development with Sierra Club, it makes you wonder how that happened. And I think what they see in me is that someone who can look at the environment and the economy and work together for the good of the city, and that's what I promise that I will do. I will walk that fine line.
Thank you. Mr. Somodi.
District 1 is the most diverse district in our community. It has 80% left of growth out of the entire GMA area. I think we need to pick a leader in District 1 that gets diversity. I'm an openly gay man. I'm married to an amazing husband, and I believe that I can be a great representative for that District 1. I see District 1 every single day. I live on Vine and Timberline. I know exactly what the trains are like. I know exactly what's going on with growth and development. I see all of the issues going on. I'm very passionate about the issues. You want to hire somebody in this position so that there's a great deal of compassion and empathy and a great deal of understanding. I stand ready on day 1 to serve District 1, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eggleston.
Thank you all again for joining us this evening. So the past 30 years since I moved here, Fort Collins has grown by nearly 80,000 people, and we're going to continue to grow. And I think taking approaches on council to make manageable, predictable, and attainable goals will be the best way to build our city and prepare our city for any more growth. I want to work with developers and private sector as well as the city to come with small changes that can be implemented quickly, but also measured and adjusted as the time needs over the next 20 years, 30 years. So I want to bring my experience over the last 4 years of attending city council meetings, serving on numerous boards and commissions, and really trying to learn every single aspect of the city to make sure that we can move forward in an intelligent way that makes it so the city of Fort Collins stays inclusive now and into the future so we can all grow old together.
Thank you. Ms. Holmes.
I am the only person up here, and including the city council, that has the expertise to actually change the police policies that have to do with brutality and are involved in how we deal with the use of force in this community. I worked in anti-corruption. I exposed all kinds of criminal activity when I was working with the Southwest Hispanic Roundtable, including dealing with FBI issues. I know exactly what needs to happen. We have a big problem in this town. No one's talking about it. It's a sub rosa issue. The police are sanitizing our community in order to make it look nice, green, and happy here. The city council enforces that force that is absolutely against the citizen. The use of force policy needs to be changed to a de-escalation. We need to stop officer-created jeopardy. We need somebody like myself in this community. I'm diverse, and I could make the changes. No one else is doing it here.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchison.
Thank you. What you see is what you get. I'm an authentic person, and I have no hidden agenda. I can remember when I was 7 years old, growing up in a town of 200, with my single mom working 5 jobs in a blinking yellow light. And here I am today in the great city of Fort Collins. I own a home in the center of the city, and I'm connected to hundreds and thousands of people in the city. And for me, I'm ready to work hard. I prepared my whole life for this very moment to be able to bring the skills that I have to the table of scaling organizations by the thousands and by the hundreds of percentages, to bring that to our city as it continues to grow and we continue to deal with the infrastructure and the real problems, many of which we've just begun to touch on tonight. I'm a humble person. It will be my joy to serve this city and be elected as the District 2 representative. And lastly, I really do think that I'll bring a balanced approach, and that's what we need on all of these issues. It isn't about one issue. It's about dealing with the real things with real skills to solve the problem. So, electnoah.com. Thanks for being here tonight.
I would like to thank each of the candidates here for participating in the forum and your willingness to be a public service. I just want to encourage everyone to vote. Get your neighbors to vote. It's so important, even in local elections. Check out vote411.org for more information from these candidates and the ballot issues. And again, thank you all for your participation.